Hi everyone, this is Brad from drums1on1.com. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about accents, how your accents and your placement of accents can change a beat that you're playing. Maybe you've thought about this before, maybe you haven't, but you're going along, you're playing a beat, and just by changing one little accent, very simple thing to do, you can completely change the way that measure sounds, or the way that phrase sounds, or the way a whole verse or chorus of a song sounds. And these are not hard things to do. It's just a matter of kind of playing around with different accents, putting different accents on different beats within the pattern that you're playing, and you can completely change the sound. You can propel the music forward, you can make it sound like it's holding back a little bit. You're not changing the time, you're not really changing the beat much, you're just placing an accent at a different spot. So for this video, exercise 1 is just a basic straight eighth pattern with very simple bass drum and snare drum on each beat. And the first one, exercise 1, we're just crashing, accenting on the downbeat. So in exercise 2, we're just taking the downbeat, the crash on the downbeat, and we're going to move it to the last eighth note of the measure. And there's two ways to play this. You can accent the last eighth note of the measure and continue to play the right hand on the hi-hat on the downbeat of the next measure. That's one way. That gets you one sound. And you can also leave out the downbeat on the hi-hat. And I will demonstrate both those so you can kind of get an idea of what it sounds like. By doing this, exercise 2, when we're not playing the hi-hat beat on the downbeat, we're leaving out the definition of where the beginning of the measure is. And so the ear doesn't really hear where the downbeat is, but it hears the crash early, so we're kind of stretching out the space between the end of the last measure and the beginning of the first measure, and it kind of makes an anticipation of the downbeat. When you leave the hi-hat beat out, then the ear doesn't really hear the downbeat because you're not really playing anything on the downbeat, and then it makes it sound like a longer amount of time. When you play the hi-hat beat on the downbeat, the ear subtly hears that with all the other music going on. You might not realize it's hearing it, but it's there. So it kind of changes that feel a little bit. It still feels like it's propelling forward, but we still have something hitting on the downbeat, so it's not quite as much. And there's a little subtle difference between those two patterns. In exercise 3, we're actually playing the same thing as 2, but we're going to play the downbeat on the following measure, at measure 2, and measure 3, and 4. And this is going to be a similar feel, but since you're playing the downbeat with the bass drum, it's a lower sound, and it gives more of a definition where the downbeat is. So it varies a little bit from exercise 2, where you're playing the hi-hat on the downbeat. Here we're playing the hi-hat and the bass drum on the downbeat. So it's propelling the next measure forward, but it's actually defining where the downbeat is. So it kind of helps to keep the time, helps keep it sound like it's flowing, but we're putting a little bit of a push towards the measure. Exercise 4, we're actually going to play the last eighth note on the snare drum, and it gives a completely different sound. And you want to make sure that the backbeat and the accented note, there's a big difference between those two. Otherwise it just sounds like a 50s rock beat. So we're trying to make it sound like we're going into the next measure and playing basically the same type of thing we did in exercise 2 and 3, but now using the snare drum. In exercise 5, we're actually taking the same thing as 4, but instead of playing the last 8th note, we're playing the last 16th note. And I think this is more effective because it doesn't sound like a 50s rock beat, but it sounds more like it's propelling the beat forward, because we're anticipating the beat. And it's almost like we're leading into the beat, because there's less space between the last 16th note on the snare and the downbeat on the kick drum. So it's less of a pullback and more of a push forward type of a feel. So these are just some simple examples to get you thinking about different types of things you can do with accents. This is just brushing the surface. You can do all kinds of things with accents. In another video, I'm going to talk about how we can play around with accents before and after the backbeat to change things, also to be able to change the sound. Sometimes you can accent a note before a backbeat and leave the backbeat out and just change the whole flavor of the pattern you're playing. But the idea here is to try to experiment with accents. Play a beat that you've been playing forever and just take it and try putting some accents in different places and see what kinds of different sounds you can get. You can use something like this, just one measure. You can use it for one phrase. You can use it for a whole verse or a chorus, or you can change the entire part if you like. It's up to you, and it's the type of sound you're after and how it best fits the music that you're trying to play. So thanks for watching. Make sure you click the subscribe button. Please leave a comment below. Tell me the kinds of videos you'd like to see. I'd be happy to hear from you. And also visit drums1on1.com for private lessons, private instruction, and see you around. Happy drumming.